Brandon Aiyuk is throwing cash on Instagram, yelling "Raise Hail," and telling the 49ers to cut him today so he can sign with Washington tomorrow. And in a minute, I'm gonna tell you exactly why Adam Peters has real reservations about him, and whether he should make that call anyway. But while Aiyuk runs his show, ESPN just ranked our skill position group 27th in the league. Bill Barnwell gets something right, and he completely misses something else, and the difference between those two things is named Jaden Daniels, and all of that connects directly to the 5 names Logan Paulson, the team's official analyst, has circled for training camp. Odafe Owa put up 11 sacks in half a season learning a brand new system on the fly. Nick Cross is the safety Durante Jones needed to make his pressure scheme work the way it was drawn up. And Josh Canera work with Laramie Tunsil opens. What that means for keeping Daniels upright in 26. I'm breaking that down right now. 49ers trade what's actually happening to Aiyuk. You have to start with the contract. Because without the contract, none of this makes any sense. Aiyuk signed a 4-year, $120 million extension with San Francisco on August 29th, 2024. $76 million in practical guarantees. That was not charity. That was market rate for a second-team All-Pro receiver coming off a career year. 7 weeks later, against the Chiefs on October 20th, 2024, he tears the ACL, MCL, and meniscus in his right knee. Season over, and here is where the actual problem starts. During rehab, Aiyuk stopped showing up to the mandatory rehabilitation sessions with the team's medical staff. Not a misunderstanding, not a scheduling conflict, a deliberate decision to not appear. The 49ers responded in July of 2025 by voiding $27 million in 2026 guarantees that were supposed to have been paid out on April 1st of that year. Aiyuk did not file a grievance. He did not challenge the decision. He accepted it quietly, and then in December, San Francisco placed him on the reserve left squad list. A de facto suspension. That's the background. Now comes the show. In early June of 2026, Aiyuk posted the first of several Instagram videos. He called the 49ers dumb and stupid for paying him close to $50 million over 2 years. He accused them of being scared to release him. He said he was going to a new team in 2026. Then he posted a video screaming, "Go Commanders, raise hail, take command." A photo of Mark Rypien hoisting the Lombardi after Super Bowl 26. A video with an NFL football sporting the Commanders logo, declaring Washington the best team in the world. And on Wednesday, June 24th, he said on video, word for word, "If I'm crazy or if I'm capping, tell them boys cut me today. And I'll sign with the Commanders tomorrow." Then on June 25th, a new video, pulling money out of a backpack and throwing it on the closet floor, rubbing it in. The message isn't subtle. From a pure fan standpoint, I get the excitement. In 2023, Aiyuk caught 75 passes for 1,342 yards and 7 touchdowns. He's genuinely close with Jaden Daniels. They were teammates at Arizona State in 2019. And Washington has needed an elite weapon outside of T-Mac for 2 years running. The narrative fit looks perfect, but narrative fit is not the same as actual fit, and I think the DMV fan conversation around Aiyuk has been more emotional than analytical, bro. Let me give you the cold version. Adam Schefter said this week, in conversations with teams around the league, that everybody is asking the same question: what is wrong with this guy right now? The videos, Schefter said, are scaring franchises away from bringing Aiyuk into their building. And here's the part that matters most for us. When Schefter directly asked Washington about the possibility of signing Aiyuk, the answer was that the Commanders had reservations earlier this offseason that probably still exist. That is not a rumor. That is the most plugged-in insider in the NFL telling you that the very team Aiyuk is publicly chasing has real doubts about him right now. What are those doubts? 3 of them, all legitimate. 1, the knee. Aiyuk has not played a single snap of NFL football since October 20th, 2024. He did not play last season. He did not attend team rehab sessions. What his knee actually looks like today is known only to him and whoever his private medical staff is. Bill Barnwell at ESPN said it straight. Even in the most optimistic scenario where the 49ers release him and Washington signs him, do not expect to see the 2023 version of Aiyuk until the second half of 2026 or possibly 2027. That is a projection I find honest and that most of the public conversation is actively ignoring. 2, the behavior. And here I have to separate emotional understanding from cold analysis. I get why Aiyuk is frustrated. They voided his guarantees over something he clearly didn't accept as a valid reason. He's trapped. But there is a real difference between being frustrated and turning that frustration into a 3-week Instagram circus while you're still technically an employee of the team that paid you. George Kittle, who has publicly defended Aiyuk again and again for years, when asked whether Aiyuk would be happy in Washington, responded with, "You guys have fun with that, I guess." You have fun with all that comes with it. That is not an endorsement. That is a warning wrapped in humor. When George Kittle talks about a former teammate that way, you listen. 3. How this actually happens. Aiyuk is not coming to Washington through a trade. Every insider has ruled that out. His contract situation is too toxic for any team to give up draft capital. What most likely happens, the 49ers wait until veterans report to training camp on July 25th. If Aiyuk shows up physically, they cut him. He becomes a free agent. At that point, Washington can act without violating tampering rules because right now they legally cannot express public interest. Here's where I land on all of this. I think Adam Peters should have that conversation, not sign him today, not hand him a massive guaranteed deal. But if the 49ers release him with a contract structure that carries zero guaranteed money going forward, and Washington can build in a clean exit if the experiment falls apart, it's worth exploring. The argument that convinces me most is not Aiyuk's production in 2023. It's his relationship with Jayden Daniels. These two actually know each other, not as superficial teammates. They train together, live together, they know how each other thinks. That kind of trust between a quarterback and a receiver is not built in minicamp in Ashburn. It's built over years. Washington gets that for free if this works. Look, I could be wrong. Maybe the behavior signals something no locker room can manage. Maybe that knee is not where it needs to be for September. But if you ask me whether the Commanders should at least have that conversation, the answer is yes, with smart contract structure. With honest expectations that this is not the guy who saves 2026, but possibly the guy who finishes 2027, and without the illusion that the Instagram drama stops automatically when the jersey changes. Offense skill positions 2026 Bill Barnwell ESPN ranking. Bill Barnwell at ESPN published his annual ranking of all 32 NFL teams by skill position group. Wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs combined. Washington landed at 27th. For context, last year they had us at 13. Before that, 26th. We're somehow ranked worse than when the roster was actually bad. And the honest question is Barnwell right or is something missing from the analysis? Both. Simultaneously, Barnwell is correct about the depth problem. The Terry McLaurin situation in 2025 was exactly what it was. He held out before training camp for a new contract and didn't sign until August. No reps with Daniels in camp. Slow start to the season. Quad injury in week 3. Season effectively over. 10 receptions from Jayden Daniels in the entire campaign. 10. McLaurin turns 31 in September. When Barnwell says there's a wider range of outcomes than his resume might suggest, that is an elegant way of saying the trajectory has more uncertainty than his name implies. The depth behind him doesn't help the argument either. Antonio Williams arrived as a third-round pick with real playmaker upside in the slot, but the man has 0 regular season snaps in the NFL. Luke McCaffrey brings position versatility, but not sustained NFL production. Treylon Burks is a first-round pick who has disappointed everywhere he's been. Dyami Brown is a 4 or 5 receiver on any competitive roster. Barnwell's read on that depth is correct. At tight end, Chig Okonkwo came from Tennessee without a single 600-yard season across 4 years in the league. Ben Sinnott has 16 catches in 33 career games. At running back, there is no clear number 1. Rachaad White has the track record, but the question is whether David Blau's system gets him back to that 1,500-yard from scrimmage version we saw in 2023. But here's the problem with Barnwell's methodology, and it's a real one. He's ranking names, not quarterback effects, and the Daniels elevation effect on skill players around him is not anecdotal. In 2024, with a skill group that no analyst considered elite, with Cliff Kingsbury building a new system from scratch during camp, Daniels won Offensive Rookie of the Year, took Washington to the NFC Championship game for the first time since 1991, and turned Dyami Brown into a $10 million free agent in Jacksonville. That kind of quarterback elevation does not show up in skill position rankings because skill position rankings evaluate players in isolation. Football does not happen in isolation. Is 27th a fair diagnosis of this roster as it exists today? Yes, honestly. Is it a useful predictor of what's gonna happen in 2026? Much less so. The variable that flips everything is health. If Daniels plays 16 or 17 games, and McLaurin gets a full season with him starting week 1, this group can perform like a top 12 unit in the conference. If not, 27th becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that without any softening is the real risk of this roster. Every optimistic projection depends on the two most important players staying healthy for 17 weeks. In 2025, neither of them did. Daniels getting hurt in his second year was the single event that collapsed every projection. If 2026 is different, the national narrative about Washington changes fast. That's the bet this front office is making. Washington Commanders training camp 2026 players to watch Odafe Oweh, Nick Cross, Josh Connerly. Logan Paulson, former Washington tight end and the team's official analyst, published his 5 players he's most excited to watch in training camp this July. The list: Jackery Krosky Merritt, Antonio Williams, Nick Cross, Josh Connerly Jr., and Odafe Oweh. 3 of those 5 matter more to me than the other 2, and I'll tell you why. Odafe Oweh. He signed the 5th largest contract of this free agency cycles, $50,600,000 in guaranteed money, up to $96 million total. He had 11 sacks last year after arriving in a trade from Baltimore mid-season, learning a new system on the fly, with no preseason and no minicamp reps. 11 sacks. Paulson calls him a superhero, and that word is not casual inflation coming from someone who does not typically hype players. The question with Oweh has always been consistency. In Baltimore, his production never quite matched the obvious physical talent, but his time in San Diego under Jesse Minter, where he won one-on-one matchups repeatedly, suggested the problem was scheme, not ability. Durante Jones runs a pressure system similar to what Minter built. Oweh arrives with a full year of work at Ashburn under his belt. If that translates to 12 or 15 sacks in 2026, the conversation about this defense changes completely. Fam, that edge presence is what unlocks everything Jones is trying to build in the back end. Josh Connerly Jr. Paulson said something specific. He's watching Connerly work extra time with the offensive line coach and have regular conversations with Laramie Tunsil. For a young tackle, that is more revealing than any preseason metric. Connerly had a rough start in 2025, but improved week after week and finished among the better performing tackles by advanced metrics in the second half of the season. If that growth continues with Tunsil and Cosme right next to him as direct reference points, Washington potentially has 3 elite pieces up front. That protects Daniels. Protecting Daniels is the single highest priority of this entire organization right now. Nick Cross. This is the name on this list that has me most locked in. Cross is the safety Durante Jones needed to run his complex pressure scheme correctly. Paulson describes him as someone who can play in the box, in the post, blitz, and affect the quarterback with a 4-3-40. That flexibility in a coverage system that demands disguise and multiple pre-snap looks is the kind of tool that makes opposing quarterbacks uncomfortable before the snap even happens. A safety who can pressure and also cover forces the offensive coordinator to identify where he is on every single play. If Cross plays the way Paulson is anticipating, Washington's secondary is going to be a whole lot harder to read than it was in 2025. And when defenses disguise well, the pass rush gets easier. Everything connects. That's everything I've got today, fam. A defense with the right pieces if Oweh, Cross, and Connerly take the next step. A skill position group sitting at 27th nationally that has a quarterback who made garbage receivers into real NFL players in 2024. And a soap opera in San Francisco that still doesn't have an ending, but that Adam Peters should be tracking with cold eyes and a clean contract structure ready. This franchise spent 40 years waiting for a real franchise quarterback. We have one. Everything else around him is buildable. Raise hail always. If this video gave you something, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, Aiyuk or Diggs. I want to read every single one. See you in the next one.